Hey, what's up, nerds? Paul at Radio Free Hammer Hall. And today, I want to talk about my experiences and thoughts on playing Skaven. Playing Skaven kind of a lot. I've got about 20 tournament games under my belt with Skaven. And, you know, I, although the majority of those were like local tournaments, a lot of them were pretty strong tournament scenes. So I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on how the army plays, like at a competitive level. What's good, what's bad for me. I can't really speak to the army in the hands of other people because I'm just a special specimen. I don't know. No, everybody plays the game differently. So, like, this is really just my experience. I'm definitely like, I don't know, to use like Magic terminology, like I'm like a mid-range player. I like to be able to be aggressive when I need to be aggressive, hold back when I need to hold back. And Skaven can allow you to do that. And I found that a lot of my losses playing Skaven are from playing with lists, frankly, with Plague Monks, where that is not what you do with Plague Monks. Plague Monks are just like, be aggressive or they die. And so I'm kind of like, I'm still trying to figure out what the right balance in Skaven is for me. Because, I mean, after like 20-ish tournament games, I'm at like batting about 500. You know, I've got about as many wins as losses. And I've learned a lot in that time period. I've also got like a ton of like non-tournament games under my belt as well with Skaven, and I've played against Skaven a shitload of times as well. So I've seen how the army performs a lot in addition to actually playing it myself. So, like, what's good about it? It's an extremely resilient army when you build your list properly. You know, like, you have big blocks of cheap guys that just don't run away to battle shock. Like, ever. You just run, like, big blocks of 40 clan rats, and you kind of put them out there screening for you, and nothing bad ever happens. Like, you can lose them in droves, but, like, you have to do exactly 40 wounds to them to make the unit go away. And that's really strong. So, that I've found is very good. I found that running clan rats in units of 20, not nearly as strong, because frankly, they last half the amount of time. You can't bog your opponent down nearly as long. They're also not nearly as good offensively. Like, they're just, in a 20-man block, they're just a blob that is getting in the way and not really doing wounds back to your opponent. So they're just holding your opponent there. But if you're running a block of 40, like, they have a decent amount of, like, I don't know. They're killing a few things on their way down. They're not just standing there getting swords in the stomach. So that's an interesting note that I've found, is like, clan rats, they come in 40s. They like, you can run them in 20, but really you ignore that and you play 40. Which brings me to, I think I need more clan rats because I only have 80, and sometimes you want to run the 120 for your battle line. And right now, if I'm running 2 blocks of 80, it means I need to run some number of Storm Vermin. And although I love Storm Vermin, they're like exactly the hammer unit that I want in Skaven. I don't necessarily always want to play them. And sometimes you want that third big block of dudes that get in the way. So that is kind of like number one for me. I've really like I've played Plague Monks a bunch. Yes, they are a big boogeyman in the meta, and people see them and they're terrified. And then, like, if your opponent knows what to do against them, or you play them a little bit wrong, they just die to a stiff breeze. You know, they've got a 6-up save, and as soon as you start killing them, their power goes down like exponentially. And if you charge them instead of you charging your opponent, then their power goes down dramatically because they're getting bonuses on the charge. And so, like, it's great. You can, like, run them forward, and whatever they touch, they just blend and delete. But now they're sitting out there exposed, and your opponent countercharges them, and they all fucking die. And that is really, like, that's a problem. Like, unless you're running, like, a Vermin Lord Warbringer, and you're giving, like, all of them Death Frenzy every time, which is really difficult to do, by the way. Even just, like, I've run a list a whole bunch with, like, 2 Screaming Bells, 2 blocks of 40 rats, or 2 blocks of 40 monks, and, like, they just, like, getting Death Frenzy off is a problem, because your opponent knows, like, I put that spell on both of my Screaming Bells. They know that's the important spell that I'm trying to cast, so they're saving their best possible unbind for that spell, because they know what fucking happens when you, like, put that on a bunch of Plague Monks. I mean, it's just like, you know, the Potion of Idiotic Bravery. Like, they just run into anything, and they're like, wah, YOLO! And, like, it doesn't matter if they die, because they're all just going down fighting every time. So, your opponent will avoid that unit like the plague until your next hero phase. And probably going to unbind that spell. Like, you have to get through the barrier of, I need to actually cast it, and I think it goes off on a 7, so that's a pain in the ass. And then your opponent has to unbind it. So, and, like, they're going to fucking try and unbind it. Like, that's not even a question. So, it's really hard to rely on that. And maybe the answer is to run a Warbringer, but I'm not going to, like, buy another... I'm not going to buy a 4th Vermin Lord just to, like, try out that idea. And I really hate running proxies. Like, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to test in, like, non-tournament games, right? Like, I don't mean this in a derogatory way to my local scene, because I love my local scene. It is tons of awesome people. It is, like, a lot of fun. We have a ton of fun. It is great people. It is just not, like, I don't want to say they're shitty players, because that's not true at all. There are a lot of very inexperienced players, and a lot of players that, like, don't even have a 2,000 point army. So we're playing a lot of, like, 1,000 point games, or we're playing Path to Glory, or we're playing Warcry. Like, we've been playing a lot of Warcry. And so, like, it's not that, like, the strategic mind isn't there. It's like they just don't have, like, the reps playing lists and building competitive lists at 2,000 points for me to bring to, like, for me to, like, proxy a Warbringer and have a realistic idea of what that list is going to do, like at a GT. Like, it's just a bad comparison. Excuse me for a moment while I try to not die. Fuck. Because I played in the tournament yesterday in Brooklyn, and I apparently got the plague. So, I'm kind of working on not dying from that while I'm talking to you guys, but I have like this rare opportunity to sit here and just talk to my camera for a while. My cell phone. I record all this shit on my cell phone, which is why it always looks like I'm looking slightly that way, because the camera's like not in the middle. The camera's over here. So, like, I have this tendency to look at myself over here instead of where the camera is over there. So I always look a bit like autistic, and I'm like not quite making eye contact with you. So that's just the way that is. And if you guys can't tell, I am on like kind of unfiltered mode right now. Otherwise, like, usually if I'm doing like a Math Hammer video, it's fairly serious and I'm not like making jokes about shit. I'm usually not swearing a lot. This is just me musing with a cup of coffee in the morning. I think it's still morning, whatever. Feels like morning to me. I just got up. I'm still drinking coffee, so it must still be morning. And I'm just kind of giving you my feelings about Skaven. So I don't know. I'm just being a little bit more colorful. Usually I would not be making jokes about, looking autistic, but it's the fucking truth. And this is just who I am as a person when I'm like not being serious about videos. So I actually want to do this a little bit more on my channel, I think, because I like to be more genuinely me. And I don't know why I'm going off on this tangent right now, because I'm supposed to be talking about Skaven, but sometimes you have to bare your soul a little bit. And so I'm going to stop being a pussy now and continue talking about Skaven. So, Christ, I don't even remember where the fuck I was in this thing. Got like distracted by the plague, and then like whatever the fuck feelings bullshit that was. So let's talk about Storm Fiends. I would like to just start by saying they are 260 points of fucking disappointment every time I play with them. I am currently at the place where, I did a video on Storm Fiends a while ago, and I'm like, so it looks like the best way to play these things on paper is to run them like in melee mode, and like that's where you get like your most damage output, the most bang for your buck. So that seems right. So I ran it with like Warp Fire Throwers and Grinder Fists and Doomflayer Gauntlets. And I am about to take like a fucking razor saw to these things and completely change their weapons loadout, because they are hot garbage in melee. Like, they are not a hammer unit. Like, I don't know what they are, but they're not a hammer unit. At least they're not like a strong hammer unit. So I think I'm going to take some notes from Vince and use them as like a really durable, like mid-range shooting unit, like rattling guns on better bodies, and like juice them up with a bunch of scryer bullshit to get lots of extra shots and rerolls and more damage and all that shit. And then it's going to be more like, run them up and shoot the shit out of your opponent. Probably not make a charge, but your opponent's not going to want to charge you because they look terrifying. And I think that's a better way to run them. So, back to the drawing board with them. Gonna take the razor saw to them and redo their weapons loadout, because I really don't want to just like go buy more of the fucking things. Because I just don't want to spend my war chest on that. I'm an adult with many important things to do. I've got limited funds for Warhammer. I've got 2 kids, a house, car payment, and all that bullshit. So I'm not exactly in a position to just like spend a whole paycheck to experiment with what loadout on Storm Fiends works the best by buying like 8 kits of them. So I've got 1 unit of them, and I'm just going to hack them up and redo that and assume that that's going to work better. And if it doesn't, well, I'll just have fun painting them and they'll go on my shelf. Need more coffee. Always more coffee. And I apologize. It looks like my camera is like wobbling around a lot. Let me just... Yeah, it is definitely... Maybe I'll get like some kind of like image stabilization or something like that. Because I have it like on a tripod on my table right now. And this thing is wobbly as hell. So I hope I'm not giving anybody like motion sickness. My understanding is most people that watch shit on YouTube about Warhammer are really like listening to it anyway. So, I mean, I hope you're not just like staring at my pretty face this whole time, watching it wobble and get nauseous. Which, just as a side note, it's really interesting because I definitely do that. Like, I don't really like watch Warhammer content on YouTube. I usually listen to it. But at the same time, like, I don't really listen to podcasts. And I think it has more to do with, like, I have to expend more effort to go listen to a podcast than I do to just, like, browse YouTube and be like, oh, like, Doom and Darkness just posted a new video. Let me go watch that. And not actually watch it and listen to it. I don't know. This is just turning into me rambling and mostly talking about Skaven. So I apologize to anybody that's getting bored in the middle. But, yeah, more Skaven talk and nonsense. So I covered clan rats, I covered plague monks, covered storm vermin. Like, juicing up clan scryer stuff is fucking bananas. Like, I love scryer acolytes. Like, every time I use them, like, they pull more than their weight. And they're like, I just intuitively know how to use that unit. And so, like, they're like the perfect unit for me to have in my army. The downside is, like, I need like 1 unit of 15 or 20 of them. So, like, they're not like a build my army around it. Like, I just know what to do with that piece in my army. And so it kind of leaves me a little bit at a loss of what to do with the rest of my army, because I know, like, really well what to do with this one thing. Like, I know when to just hold them back, when to push them up and go YOLO with them, when I just do regular shots versus when I do all the scryer bullshit to them or some of the scryer bullshit to them. Just, like, it depends on the situation, and, you know, it is what it is. I've been oddly a little bit disappointed in the Warlock Bombardier, and the big thing is I just find he dies a lot, and it leaves me without, like all of my, like I can't use my Warpstone tokens. I don't have more warp power. I lose my Vigor Dust Injector. And all of a sudden, like, all of those crazy things that I was doing with Scryer, like, I can't do anymore. So I'm really wondering if either number one, I need to run an Arch Warlock instead to get like the 3-up save instead of the 5-up save and an extra wound, or just run like 2 engineers of some sort. And you know, there's a points differential in that. I only own 1 Bombardier, and at this point, like trying to find them on eBay is like good luck finding like a nuanced sprue one, and if you do, it's like $1 bajillion because the thing isn't in its own blister yet. So it's still like people selling them out of the Carrion Empire box, and of course there's still high demand for them and only so many of them in existence. So economics happens and people are just like making a killing on selling these stupid things if they happen to have them. If somebody had the foresight to be like, I'm going to buy a bunch of Carrion Empire boxes and then slowly drip the heroes out that never are going to get blisters, good on those guys, because they made a shitload of money. So yeah, I dig what Scryer does. I just need to find ways to do it better. I think I've tried rattling guns and they just don't really do what I want them to do. Like they're the same number of points now. Like 1 rattling gun equals 5 Scryer acolytes in points, and like I would almost always rather have 5 more acolytes than have a rattling gun. So it's kind of silly to do that. All the other weapons teams blow. I've been a little bit torn on Giselles. I've tried running them in a bunch of different arrangements, and there's kind of like this twofold problem with them. Number one, you kind of have to hold back an engineer to babysit them, to give them buffs, and you're only giving them buffs sometimes because, you know, if you use Vigor Dust Injector on them and more warp power on them, then you're like blowing up some of your guys, and then you have to like babysit them for a battle shock test, and they're not always doing the work that you want them to do. Like they're 420 points for 3 units of them for 9. And I find that like 9 of them is what you need to actually get the work out of them that you want. But like they're not doing 420 points worth of damage over the course of the game. So I'm really kind of torn. Like I think they're going back on the shelf for a while and trying to find more of what will actually work differently. I've tried warp lightning cannons, and I've had like mixed success with those. Like I don't like how swingy they feel, and that sucks. And I like if you have to babysit your Giselles with an engineer, then you like really need to babysit your warp lightning cannons, because you have to keep the engineer an inch away from them to actually be able to like overcharge them and throw 12 dice. So like if you're doing that and running any other Scryer stuff, then you need a second engineer to be like, one hangs back with your warp lightning cannons and one is running behind all of your other Scryer stuff to give that bonuses, which feels silly and ridiculous. So I'm not sure. Either I'm going to go harder on Scryer and try and like maximize that end of it, or like just not, or just play it differently. As far as hammer units, like I really like Storm Vermin a lot, and I know they're not a popular choice, but hear me out for a second. They're throwing a decent number of attacks. they're, if you run them in 20, their first set of attacks, if you get the charge off, is on 3s and 3s. You can Vigor Dust Injector them to give them 2s and 3s. And if you run a Claw Lord, you're giving them an extra attack. So a unit of 20 is throwing 60 attacks. So, well, actually, 61 attacks. 61 attacks on 2s and 3s with Rend 1 is pretty good. So, and then, then they have a 4-up save. So they're actually, they're probably getting as much work done as a unit of Plague Monks for about the same price, and then they don't die. Because the thing that I found with Plague Monks is, yes, they make everything explode that they touch, but they're throwing 100 dice and they only need 50. And so they're always overkilling stuff, and your Storm Vermin, they're killing the thing. They're getting the same amount of work done in a unit of 20 of them than a unit of 40 Plague Monks for 20 points less. And yes, the Plague Monks delete everything, but they delete it with I don't know, extreme prejudice. And the Storm Vermin are they're getting the job done. They're just not doing it with okay, I've only rolled half my attacks and the thing's dead. Plus they're a much better play experience because you're not doing all of the bullshit oh, the 6s have rend and then the 6s to wound have 2 damage, so I have to make my opponent make 4 different sets of saving throws, plus I'm throwing 2 different profiles of attacks, so I have okay, I've got 60 attacks on this profile and 40 attacks on that profile, and they have different ranges, so I have to recount how many guys are getting in attacks with the staves versus the knives, and it's just a pain in the ass. I am this close to putting my fucking Plague Monks on eBay. I just don't like how they play. And they're painted up to a tabletop standard with a relatively generic basing scheme that somebody could just either use it as it is or change it, or just add their shit on top of it to make it work. So I'm not really that concerned about it. As far as is it gonna fuck up the price? No. They're tabletop standard and with it practically unbased. Because I've really my Skaven, I have when you're doing that many models, I'm not about to do complicated bases on 200 infantry. Just not doing it. So they have pretty simple bases. Anyway, got off on a tangent there. So I really like Storm Vermin. I kind of want to pick up more of them because they're just a good hammer unit and they do what I want. I am always... Here's the weird thing. It's I'm always happy with what a Claw Lord does for the list. They turn up that unit of 40 clan rats into an actual semi-offensive piece. They turn up your Storm Vermin to be Plague Monk level of whatever they touch blows up. So I'm always happy with the Claw Lord. And the fact that he's buffing up, your clan rats as well as your Storm Vermin, I like that, and he's going to become more of a staple in my lists, I think. I've tried the battalion, and every time I've tried the battalion, I think like only once I've actually gotten like more than one unit in that bubble. So it's mostly for like that extra command point, that extra artifact, and lowering your drops, which like always feels excessive. Like that extra artifact doesn't do anything for me, and lowering drops I really don't care that much as like playing Skaven. And like you can solve your problems that you have with like not having control over going first by just I totally lost my train of thought. By just deploying differently. Like that's all you have to do. Like you have to like go like, okay, am I going to outdrop my opponent? Like look at their list. Am I outdropping them? If answer is no, then deploy in a way that it's not going to fuck you if you go second or if you go first. So you have to kind of go like conservatively and, you know, bubble up your guys if you need to and protect your shit, and, you know, things will be pretty okay. So that's definitely I think it's basically like it's a waste of 140 points. Like if I want the extra command point, I can just spend 50 points and get a command point. So I'm looking at that, and that frees up a lot of points in my list. I can go like command point, extra engineer, and I feel like that makes the list a lot better immediately. So that is one possibility, or just like command point, arch warlock, and then I have an extra like 90 points to do something. I don't know. Skaven have a good ability to just kind of like tweak their points around in a bunch of different places to like squeeze stuff in the way they want to, because all of their shit like on a very base level kind of sucks on its own. So it's easy to like fiddle with numbers and like get another thing in that you want. So that's very useful. Skaven list building is really flexible, and you can spend a lot of time sitting there like, okay, well, I can shave like, okay, I can shave off 20 clan rats off of that unit, and I can go like 5 less Scryer acolytes and still have a strong unit of acolytes, and I still got some clan rats, and now that's freeing up like 140 points to squeeze in something else. Plus, like I had this other random few points over here. Now I can like change something else like big in my list. So there's a lot of flexibility there. The Vermin Lord Warpseer, I think, has been really strong, and it was just a matter of like I needed to learn how to use him. And he's just a really good utility piece, and then he can be a really good like he doesn't deal a ton of damage, but he does enough damage to get by. And because he is extremely durable, he's going to get in more damage like when he grinds stuff out. So he's really good. It was more of a matter of like I had to learn how to play with him more than anything else. And I feel a lot more comfortable playing him now. And now he's like, I just want to run him in every list. Like he's an all-star. He's giving me lots of extra command points. He's protecting my guys from battle shock. He's, he's a decent defensive piece. He's an okay offensive piece. He's just like checking a lot of the boxes, and even at 300 points, I feel like he's still pretty worth it. So I've definitely been, like now that I finally like get how to use him, like I feel a lot better about playing him. Like, I like how it goes when I play him. So let's talk about Screaming Bells for a minute. Like, I've tried like lists with 1 bell, I've tried lists with 2 bells, I've tried lists with 0 bells. And their viability, I feel like, is very swingy. Like, sometimes they're like, the Peal of Doom is just like this all-star. If your opponent is running like MSU, it's just like, you know, you roll an 8 and you go like, that unit has D3 mortal wounds, that unit has D3 mortal wounds, that unit has D3 mortal wounds, and you kill a bunch of stuff and things die to battle shock and it's great. Or like sometimes you just like roll poorly for the Peal of Doom like the whole game and nothing happens. I've played more than 36 games, like well more than 30, or not 36 games, well more than 36 turns of running Screaming Bells. And a lot of those were running 2 Screaming Bells, and I've only summoned a Vermin Lord once. And I still lost anyway. So, but that was a game against Slaanesh, so I'm not sure that even counts. Because Slaanesh is just broke as fuck. Like, I like, there's multiple good builds of that list, and Slaanesh is just broken. Like, that's a whole separate video about, like, what the fuck were they thinking with Slaanesh. I really hope that we actually get, like, a points update for them in December, and, like, they dial back some of this shit. Maybe adjust their summoning table, because it's not happening right now. Like, it's just too strong. And definitely, like, also adjust the points on the Beast of Chaos battalion that lets you run, like, Bestigor with a Slaanesh mark and all that shit. Like, definitely need some adjustments to make that whole thing feel more fair, because it's like they can just kind of fit all their toys in a list, and that's never good when you can do that. Like, that was the problem with Skaven, and now they adjusted their points, and you can't quite fit all of your toys in a Skaven list anymore, so it feels a lot more fair. I think Skaven are still really good, but, like, the big thing is like, you can't fit, like, that extra 40-man unit of Plague Monks anymore. Like, you have to dial it back a little bit to still have a balanced list. So, I think they're a little bit more fair. Like, you can't run as bent of a list. That said, like, I did yesterday just play a game against a list with 140 Plague Monks, and I was like, this is still oppressively strong. Like, if you just spam Plague Monks, it's ridiculous. So, that's a thing. Yeah, so I overall positive experience with Skaven, and most of my time playing it has been really good. I enjoy playing the army. It's very much my playstyle in general. That, like, playing Plague Monks in particular is not my playstyle, but you know, when I'm running stuff that actually is in my wheelhouse and not just trying to power game and play something that's not my playstyle for the sake of trying to win, then I have better results. So I think for me, it's a matter of running the less optimized version of the list that's more my play style that I feel comfortable with, and running that, like, to the maximum that I can, Like, that's going to do a lot better for me than just running like all the plague monks and all the broken shit and whatever, because it's just not my play style. So I think that's sort of, I don't know, it's kind of my summary of just about everything in Skaven. I've played against Skaven a lot, and I feel like what I've seen other people do is pretty consistent with what my experience has been. I think the big thing with Skaven is they're a very versatile army. There's a lot of different builds in there that can be pretty decent and, put up, a winning record. And the big thing is, I think that you have to play with an optimized version of an army with a style that is compatible with what you usually like, instead of just trying to run bullshit. And you'll do well. And you'll have more fun. So that's about it for now. I've rambled on about Skaven for, 40 minutes now. So I think I'm just going to be done about it. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to go try to not die of whatever fucking Brooklyn plague that I got yesterday. And I'll see all you nerds later.